Okay, just started recording so everybody knows.
All right.
All right. Let me get this squared away. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing some time with us on your summer Tuesday. This is the last meeting of the Yellow House for the New Orleans Architecture Foundation and in partnership with the Leona Tate Foundation for Change. And looking forward to this conversation. But first, let's, if you haven't bought the book yet, or if you plan on buying books in your future, you should go to Community Book Center on Bayou Road and buy your books. You can also buy them online through bookshop.org, and a portion of the profits are shared with Community Book Center if you put in them as your home bookstore. I am Mike Grody, your co-moderator, and Melissa Lee, fresh back from a trip from Mexico, which I'm very jealous about. Is there other co-hosts? Would you like to say anything, Melissa?
Good evening, everyone. As always, it's a pleasure, and really looking forward to tonight's conversation being led by Mrs. Leona.
Nick, would you like to say anything?
Nothing other than I'm looking forward to this last one and a conversation about the book. So very happy to be here. That's our beautiful board. So we're out doing something. I don't know what. Hi, everybody wave.
Screaming baby.
Hi, Lucy.
You good?
That's going to be the board director of communication soon.
That she will be.
I have this up here. Everyone has heard it before. This is a year from the time of this writing of this critique of our mission. It's a 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre, and a year and a week from the 1-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. And all of those events and many others are, I think, reasons for us as an organization to be introspective, to be self-critical, and to change. And that's what we're trying to do. This is the new direction, what we're trying to change the organization to begin to kind of tell a more complete story of our city. One thing that I will say that I didn't have time to make a slide about is a new program that we're working on. We've already met, which is exciting. Everyone's a little late on their homework, although they have till midnight to get me their homework. But it's a program, the name is maybe a work in progress still, but we're using the name right now, Make NOLA. And it's a program where we're celebrating folks who make in the city and make the city. And that means traditional crafts folks, traditional building crafts folks, but also much, much more. People who are making history, people who are making art, people who are making buildings, people who are making barbecue. And so our city is really rich with folks who make things, from the everyday folks, like a friend of mine who has a whole room in his house dedicated to Mardi Gras costumes, and I'm sure everybody knows those folks, to some of the most amazing artists and artisans in the country. And so what we're trying to do is find those folks, and lift them up and kind of illuminate them as best we can as an organization. So in the future, be on the lookout for updates from that programming, and you will be able to enjoy them virtually or also in person. So there'll be opportunities for both. And I just kind of wanted to make a quick plug for that program upcoming. Melissa.
Yes, community expectations. And I know all of you on this call know the drill. I would just say that I applaud each and every one of you for kind of recognizing and agreeing to these set of community expectations, where we're, really navigating hard, tough conversations about power, privilege, oppression. And by doing so, we are recognizing and acknowledging and listening deeply and asking all of the things that we need to in order to kind of build the type of community that we want. So with that said, I think this would probably be a good time for us just to say hello to one another, and to just verbally say that, we all agree to the community expectations.
I'll go first.
Go. Yeah.
Hi, hello everybody. Good to see you. I agree to the set of community expectations, and just kind of happy to be here and excited that this is our second successful book club closing. So thanks for making it possible. Oops, sorry. Oops.
This is Nick Marshall, chair of the board currently, and I also accept the community expectations, the recognize, acknowledge, listen deeply, and ask. Also, as I'm sitting here, Melissa, I would ask that we'll start all our board meetings with this same expectation list, and make sure that the current board understands where we are when we have these meetings, and hopefully that will live on past our tenure.
Tremaine.
Hey everybody, good to see y'all again. I'm Tremaine and I'm agreeing.
Oops. Sarah. I'm just going around to my screen.
I'm Sarah Ash. I'm here in Middlebury, Vermont. I agree with the community expectations, and I have been very deeply moved by this book. Having lived in New Orleans for about 10 years, about 8 years ago, I can't remember when, 15 years ago. But I found this book just extraordinarily powerful, and so appreciative to be able to be part of this group, even though I'll probably do mostly listening.
I agree too. I'm Sarah's other half, and I lived in New Orleans. I'm Sarah Bush's father, and I lived in New Orleans since 1973 until we left right after Katrina. But anyway, I agree with the expectations.
Kathleen.
Hi, I'm Kathleen. I'm really happy to be here. I just got back from a trip, but nothing fantastic, just Houston. Agree to the community expectations.
What's going on with our technical assistance?
He's a baby.
Miss Tate, you agree?
Director of Communications.
Yes, I do agree, and hope to pass it on to this community that really needs to be uplifted. Yes, I agree.
Wonderful.
I'm sorry, everybody. I'm all discombobulated over here. So what we wanted to do before the conversation started was we wanted to kind of give Leona and Tremaine the floor for a little presentation about where things are at with the project, where things are at with the interpretive center, and just kind of an update so that everyone here knows and that everyone also can share far and wide with friends and everyone else. So I am going to reshare the screen. If I can fight the little one for the mouse.
Am I presenting or Tremaine?
Together,
Okay.
you're gonna start. We're. I feel like we're amongst family, so we can just kind of chat.
Yeah. We've been talking about the yellow house, but now we're looking at the beige color house, I want to say. And this is an old picture or the beginning stages. I'm not sure what year this picture was taken, but this is how McDonough 19 used to look.
And we kind of just wanted to give everyone a historical kind of context of where we were, even though we have the reference in the book. And we see here Leona being escorted by the marshals with Gail behind her, and then Tessie coming rounding out the corner. And then we also have Gail, which is the photo that a lot of people see with her staring in the back. So just kind of giving an image.
All right, this is what the building looked like after Katrina, really. This is before we started renovations, and I'm sure you can see the big difference in what it's going to look like. Well, what it looks like now. It's I tell the contractor and everybody that's working in there, it's amazing what they've done. I wouldn't have known where to start with a project like that in the shape of that the building was in.
So I'm not sure if everybody knows that in 2010, right after Leona started the foundation, we were able to get the marker placed in a neutral ground, which one of our original plans was to create a pavilion to mark the historic events of 1960, and before we knew that the building could be a reality. And so it's amazing to me as being part of this project for, the long haul, how far we've come from that original plan and how that's much greater. And that's a double a double positive, but it's just a lot. And I'm just so excited about that. So one of the things before you go too far, Mike, the picture that was on the slide before, where Leona's standing in the archway. So I want you guys to remember this kind of image. This is the place where I take a picture each time that I go into the building. And so you'll see this archway from different angles coming up. So people have been asking, what is the TEP Center? So the TEP Center is a mixed-use building, and so we know that informally we've been talking about the first floor is interpretive space and also workshop training space for the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. And so we are in the process of designing with Gallagher, our design contractor, to create an interactive exhibit and programming area. And then floor 2 and floor 3 are our affordable housing units for seniors 55 and older. and it's just, that transformation is just wild. So the apartments on the second and third floor, those will be ready at the end of August. We'll be ready to be start leasing those out, and they are beautiful. They are beautiful. That's all I can say. And then the first floor, we're going to start with 3 phases of the exhibit. So we'll start with, and you'll see as we move forward, we'll start with the second floor entrance, where guests to the interpretive center will come up through the second floor, and then they'll go back down to the first floor, where we'll have some other exhibits, and then we will go into the actual classroom where Gail, Leona, and Tessie were for that first year and a half.
And the reason
So,
we go to the second floor first is because that's how we entered the building, to the second floor where the principal's office was. And I just want them to move in the way that we moved that day.
so we all, couple of us were on this call, remember this day. That's March 9th, 2020. I say the Monday before the world shut down. We celebrated our with a grand celebration, the groundbreaking. And then as we were celebrating the groundbreaking, we had people working inside as well. So it was a simultaneous thing. And luckily and thankfully, construction has not stopped since that time. We've had some, little few hiccups, and Mike might want to say a little bit about that. And we could skip it.
I can talk a little bit about it. Yeah, I mean, this is a project that has taken a lot of sort of hits, but keeps on coming back and keeps coming back stronger. Made it through COVID. Made it through this event without any positive tests that we know about. And one of the worst hurricane seasons in a while. We did have some damage from Cristobal and Zeta. Had to replace the roof, which is not planned for. And then we've also had just other hangups and hiccups from places outside of our control. But all the while, the project has progressed. We've had a really great team working on this. CDW Services, our contractor. Ray Manning, Manning Architects are our architects. And it is a testament to Leona and Gail and Tessie, and really Leona's sort of stick-to-itiveness about doing something with this school building. And I am really sort of honored and emotional all the time, and just happy to have been a small part of turning this vacant school building with such a history and a story into what it's going to be. So I'm super excited about that. Let me...
So as I shared with you earlier, the first floor, as you come into the ground floor of the building, this will be a space where we are able to recognize those individuals and organizations who made donations to the project. And so we wanted to just give you a kind of idea of what you may see when you come into the TEP Center. We're looking at a variety of different styles, but just to give you an idea. And the other, also in that space, Leona is going to display some of her personal artifacts that she wants to share with visitors. What kinds of things did you want to especially see in there, Leona?
Oh God, I got probably a lot of awards and certificates from the city, from the governor, from oh Lord, it's really a lot. I'm still deciding what's gonna go there and what's not gonna go there. But I even have an award that we were sworn in as honorary U.S. Marshals in 2010. So I'm sure that that's gonna be the main focus.
Yeah. So we wanted to have a space for her to show those things as well. And then one of the really important introductory details in the exhibit and design is the timeline from Reconstruction through Jim Crow through the present that will take you through all of the exhibits that will be the final in the final exhibit design for the TEP Center. And like I shared earlier, we're starting with the first three spaces for phase one. But this timeline, I think, is very important to give context to how Leona's story plays into the larger narrative, civil rights narrative. So remember, I told you, remember that hallway. So here, the picture on the left of the screen is probably about 4 months ago, maybe. And so we would just be putting up, there was a staircase, a double staircase that led from the ground floor to the second floor when Leona, Gale, and Tessie were at McDonough 19, and that had been removed in one of the subsequent renovations. And so Leona said that it was really important to put it back so that it could be historically accurate. So we have on the left the picture where the staircase is being, like the space is just kind of framed out. And then on the right, we have an image from May 14th, where the staircase is
Yeah.
pretty much complete. And so that staircase was actually part of a project with the National Historic Trust to work and renovate that. And we also work with the Hope Crew, and that was an experience. And I can say many positive things about working with not only the National Trust, but also Hope Crew in particular. That was an opportunity for Mike to teach young young people interested in preservation and construction some really important, not only job related skills, but just kind of life things that they talked about. So I think that was a week that we all enjoyed. So that area where we saw that the arch is where we're going to have the principal's office exhibit. And so what the quick video that you're going to see now is the beginnings of the Gallagher design for what the visitor will experience once they begin and walk through the second floor of the TEP Center. So ideally, you're walking in the footsteps of Leona, Gale, and Tessie as they move and sit and wait for how long, Leona?
Probably about half the day before we was even thought about being placed in a classroom.
So the visitor will have that experience of walking the steps, be accompanied by their parents, having to sit and wait on the bench, seeing the hopscotch, or you see the shadow of the hopscotch, which that appears as you're in the exhibit. The two side pieces of artwork are actually glass, I guess, walls. Can you tell me a little bit, give me a little
Sure.
bit help with that structure?
Sure. It's glass storefront. So that's like the glass in front of any kind of commercial sort of retail building, say. Um, and this was a tricky conversation because the hallway of the building, of a hallway of a school building, is the character defining space according to historic preservation. And we are creating a fishbowl basically within the hallway, which posed a few challenges. One, some architectural challenges and some historic preservation challenges, um, and also some egress, getting out of the building challenges. But we did it, and everyone from the state fire marshal to the historic preservation folks are on board. So that's a feather in everybody's cap that kind of we're able to kind of accomplish this very unique solution to trying to have this interpretation in front of the principal's office, which is so important to the day of the first day, the November 14th, and also still have some functionality for the tenants who will live on the floor that this exhibit occupies. And I think one thing that we weren't able to have on this video is that there's some sound. There'll be sounds from that day. It's going to be a very interactive interpretive center, and we'll see that. You want me to go to the next slide, Jermaine?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll see that in this next video in a second.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more about. Remember, Leona says she wants you to walk through her footsteps. So you're entering up the outside stairs. You are going in through and sitting and seeing where they sat in front of the principal's office, and going through and really understanding the passing of time. So you'll see different elements in that area. And then when you come down those new old stairs, that's what we've been calling them, you will enter and you'll see the timeline that we talked about a few slides back. And then you get into what we call the McDonough 3 classroom. And the very first rendering that Gallagher gave us, we were blown away with what they wanted to do with light projections, and showing how the students were taken out of the classroom when Leona, Gale, and Tessie were placed in there. And so you'll see you have 3 real desks, and then the rest of the desk are light projections on the floor that will dim as the time passes in that room. And so I just thought that that was a really powerful display. And you also have on the windows the scenes from outside. And one of the things that Leona can tell you a little bit more about what that experience was like, because she didn't see that, but we know that it was there.
The windows were papered up. We didn't see any of that. And it seems like once we got in the building, the sound from outside disappeared. I don't know if we just ignored it. I'm sure we did. We did. But it was a safe haven after a while. They couldn't see in the windows, and we couldn't see out of the windows. So we were fine. We were fine.
And as we were talking through this, she also wanted it to be everyone to really understand that how her interaction and their interaction with their teacher, Mrs. Meyer, was really, she was a safe person to be with. And I mean, y'all know Leon and I have had numerous conversations about this, about her experience. So she always says that, Mrs. Myers, she felt like she wasn't from there, from New Orleans, because of the way that she cared for them.
She was more motherly than a teacher. She, we didn't get to interact with any other teacher. They were in their classes with no students, but she she was she did her job, and she did a very good job of it.
One thing I want to just point out, go back one sec, Mike, before we get to that, just so that I can set that up. On the teacher desk, as well as the 3 physical student desks, we have some projections and motion censored exhibits. And so the slide that is coming with the video, this is an example of the type of exhibit that we're designing for the tops of the desk.
When did you write Native Son?
That was written in 1940.
How long did it take you to write it?
Just about 1 year.
1 year of hard work. And how many
Very
hours a
hard
day
work.
would you work?
Well, you see, I write in what you might call sustained spirit. And when I was in the very thick of the book, I would get up in the morning and start about 8 o'clock and work straight through until midnight.
Now, I want to ask you what we think are important questions regarding you and your people and your problems and our problems.
I've never tried to dress up the Negro problem. The Negro doesn't want to associate with whites so much as he wants to become.
So of course I clipped the video for timing, but so that was a kind of example, and we were blown away when we saw that and it could be so realistic. So that's what's been up with the Tep Center, and we're still working. So if you would like, so we have here all of our partners who have helped to make this a reality. We have a few more to add here, some recent developments. And if you want to learn some more information about the project, about the foundation, and also our Because of You I Am campaign, we have links to the various websites. And I really appreciate you
Yeah,
taking the time.
we sure do. I know earlier you all heard Tremaine say that we'll be starting out with only 3 exhibits. And and that reason is because we still have to raise money. And I want to make Mike very proud of me at this moment. Y'all just don't know. But if anybody could assist us with names of people that we can contact as donors or people that's interested in the project, please send them to us. We are at that point now where we need to get this done. We need to get it done. And whatever you could do is a help.
And we have Kathleen as a member of our board. And so how have you found being a part of the project and sharing what made you really want to be a part of it?
I really enjoyed I enjoyed your presentation just then, because when I went there it was nothing like that. I think the being on the board has, I mean, this is during the time that I was in elementary school. So all of this is kind of like real to me. It's like I remember some of the things that were going on. Of course, I was on the West Bank, but this project is awesome. I think the exhibits from what you're showing us, I think it's going to be great. I really do. I think it's awesome.
It's emotional.
It is, and I'm actually very proud to be a part of it. Um, it
Thank you so much.
it
Mhm.
really has, made me look at things differently, think differently, and who do I know? And it's just been very enriching for me.
Yeah, this
Thank you.
is going to be a first class, world class facility, and I think rightfully so. Just to kind of give you guys some numbers to chew on as before we wrap this up. We've raised over $16 million so far to build to sort of restore the building, um, and um, and start the design and even do some fabrication of exhibit work. Um, there's probably about $1.5 million more to raise. In the short run, there's probably about 400,000 needing to raise. In the kind of interim, a total of 1.5. So an additional 1.1 million would be the goal, and then to completely outfit the interpretive center with exhibits of that kind of quality, um, and then possibly another 1.5 to 2 for a long-term endowment to sustain this facility in perpetuity. Um, but this project has made it this far and has attracted $16 million in investment and philanthropy and everything else. We have a lot of sources, like all of our projects do, um, but it's getting there, and it's a really really exciting project. And just so you know, and Ann Meyer is on the line also, that we will hopefully be doing a joint event with NOAF, Leona Tate Foundation for Change, and One Book, One New Orleans, sometime towards the end of the year, when we have a finished building and hopefully some exhibits and some things to see and do. So we're excited about the idea that will be happening sometime late fall, early winter, possibly around the time of the anniversary. Um, but that's to be determined. So
Yes. Thank you.
well, great. Thanks everybody. Thanks Tremaine, Leona, and Kathleen for that. Uh,
Thank you.
so let's wrap up our conversation about the book. I think the second half of the book um, was much more, uh, I think, about what the last 2 decades of New Orleans has faced, and done so well and so personal, but she was still, I think, what was so powerful about the second half of the book was she was so able to talk about these kind of larger systemic issues but still make them personal, and to be able to do that as a writer, um, to be able to thread that needle, because it's also a real pitfall to talk about systemic problems in individuals, because usually what happens is we start blaming the individuals for the systemic problems. And she was just so, I thought, kind of so gracefully was able to kind of not fall into that trap, but still be able to put a personal touch on these systemic problems. And I just I thought the first half of the book was amazing, but the second half of the book really just kind of blew me away, at how well she was able to kind of sort of make such amazing points. I think also so much of that second half of the book I was familiar with because I'm a post Katrina transplant, and I remember so much of what she talked about, kind of being here. So I hope that, one, that this conversation doesn't trigger any kind of emotions about the storm. And I don't want to sort of, unless you feel important to share your experience about the storm. But I know we're going to probably touch upon moments and pieces that could be hard to manage. So I just want to kind of throw that out there to make sure that you guys know that if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to talk about it. But I guess, does anyone want to share their thoughts?
I'll share my thoughts. Volunteer. I thought there was a couple things that, the beginning of the book, the middle of the book, the end of the book, kind of this sandwich of memory, personal experience, and then revisiting memory. I thought it was really important that this house held the memory of this family, and that's what she really was describing. I also thought that the idea that this family lived in the margins and how the margins are overlooked is really important to what we're talking about here, and what the foundation is trying to do, kind of a focus on this idea of margin or forgotten memories of people that exist because they're not in our view. I thought that exposed that really well.
I would certainly agree with what Nick just said, and I think of it as both in the book and just what I saw in the presentation about the TEP Center. It's how you negotiate hard memories versus good memories, right? In the same breath, you are retelling the stories of hard memories about just dehumanization and loss and trauma, but yet in another breath you're talking about some of the most grounding, greatest, happiest memories and moments and transformation that comes throughout of that. And so that the kind of institutionalized racism, the hardship, how do you square that with the happier memories that are tied to your evolution, your growth, your childhood, and how do you create that balancing act? And what does all of that mean? So yes, those are my quick thoughts.
One of the things that I also, as I was reading, I found like it was some of the narration that I give to our visitors to the Living Museum. When people come and they're like, well, how did you, and how could you, and all of these things, and how you're still here, and oh, I feel so sorry for what happened. And yes, those things are bad, and it's generations of not so great memories, but there's also a lot of good things that came about in the same place. And I don't always want to focus. I tell people, don't put all of your focus on the negatives. We're moving forward. That's the thing about it. And sometimes memories, good or bad, are what you need to experience and teach you the lessons that you need to learn.
I think what not amazed me, but what was most interesting to me is how she described New Orleans so wonderfully to me, because it was, you know, when she described the time of after Katrina and with Ray Nagin and how the city was and how things were going, I think she did a really great job of describing that, almost, in my opinion, accurately, because of how things were happening in the city. I just thought she did a really great job of doing that.
And just personally, her depiction of Ray, and it was like, yeah, I know this dude. I know this dude well. You know, yeah, because yeah. It was different.
So I think one of the things too that yeah, I don't want to get too nerdy into the weeds about stuff, but you know, the house itself is anyone's house. Any house that we look at is both a commodity and a symbol and a memory, all sort of rolled up into one, right? And you can look at it with no emotion as a financial asset, or not, in many cases, and more just a financial burden, and then when you where you place this you know this thing, this sort of product, it becomes even more important, sort of the place that it exists in, the place that it becomes, and the burden that placement has on the occupants, both sort of in a regional sense with storms and water and a harsh environment, and in the local sense, the access and the proximity to services, to school, to all of those sort of things, and you know, that when we leave it up to, and this is me on a soapbox here, I'm speaking as an individual when I say this, when we leave it up to sort of the market to decide where the best place to put these things are, we are leaving it up to chance in many ways, and we're leaving it up to someone's decision about profit margins, rather than, is this actually a good place to have a house where we know a family will live, where we know what, eventually children will be, and eventually children will have to walk to school, and children will have to cross Chef Highway to get there. And I think that is the a very sort of invisible but sort of very relevant tension that exists within how our cities are made and how our cities are kind of imagined and thought of and planned and executed, right? And I think that I don't think we think about that a lot, if it's not part of our everyday sort of job, right? I think that houses are just there because they were there. Well, actually, they were thought about, they were planned. Some cities are planned, some cities are not. Some cities are just sort of they just sort of begin to happen. New Orleans is kind of like that. It sort of with these farmland that sort of got chopped up by different surveyors, and you see remnants of streets that don't line up because they were chopped up by different surveyors, and no one was paying attention or getting along, or all three things, or both those things. But the consequence of all of that is seen, I think, so well in this house, and it's really I don't have the words, and I don't have the conclusion to sum it all up, because I think about Carl all the time, the oldest brother, going out there and mowing the lawn when there's no house. There's this powerful, still this kind of powerful kind of attraction or draw for him, to be there and to occupy the space there, even though the house is gone, and even though in so many ways the memory of good times were so far away from the times that now, that he was just there by himself often, and you don't think about that this house was bought at a sheriff's sale. I'm sure the family before that had financial troubles. They couldn't pay their mortgage. It gets foreclosed upon. Then Sarah's mother buys the home at sheriff's sale. All of those sort of things. To paint the picture of this house is almost impossible. And she did a really amazing job to sort of talk about all of the different parts and pieces of this house. And everyone's house, right? Like, and I'm just truly fascinated by even just, I could sit here all by myself and just think about all of these things, because there are so many forces and so many aspects to your home, to where you call it, to where you call what you call home. And I think we would be a better place if we put a little bit more thought into how we make our cities and where we put our homes and how we do things. And this book is such a reminder of that. Jermaine?
I don't have anything.
Oh, you're talking it so quietly. Hey, Ann.
Well, I kind of have a question as we're talking about how we as residents can influence our community. And I think of people who have grown up in the lower 9 or in the East, and they've interacted with certain things that they didn't really question why they kids had to cross Chef Mentor Highway. They didn't really say, hey, no, this isn't okay. We have to do it differently. And I am hoping that we're seeing a bit of a difference. We've got a committee in the city about livability, the complete streets. And I hope that somebody from the TEP Center and from the people that it represents are working with the city to help realize that appropriate access by pedestrian, by locals, by tourists, to have some sort of bicycling availability, and to have really appropriate mass transportation that will allow tourism to enter and support our neighborhood. I'm not quite sure how we make that step from being unvoiced and having our children do things that we wish they didn't have to making our community one where a jewel and a gem like the TEP Center is supported in every way possible, including with infrastructure, to make it successful. Hoping that somebody who's working on the building and who understands that sort of planning and might be on the board or might be working with the city on that, recognizes that, yeah, this could be it's a great resource in so many ways. There are going to be apartments there that people in the neighborhood can walk to and take care of people. They can take care of the place. They can go and live there and have their families close by. I'm just hoping that it becomes everything that it can be, because we are at a point where we have no excuse to just accept systemic injustice and inequity. We just don't have an excuse this time.
I'll chime in a little bit. I mean, I think that everyone that was here post storm gets some sort of reaction, mostly not positive, when they hear the word charrette, especially when they hear the word neighborhood charrette. And everyone got really tired of the incessant community engagement to sort of redo the city, renew the city. And there's so much sort of tied up in that. There's so much tied up in the loaded language of renewal. And I would say that to your first point, Anne, I think folks knew and had opinions about where they had to live and the challenges that where they were living, to their family, to their quality of life, to all those sort of things. They just didn't have representation. They just often didn't have the ability to vote. And you know, that was a different era, but I don't think that things have changed much. If we sort of look at the book, our first book, The Color of Law, and we look at this book, it's slow to change, and the kind of consequence and kind of effect of even just 2 generations past, and the decisions that were made and the options that were available put folks in these kind of places like the Yellow House. And as far as, you know, I think there's a quote that I put up on the title page of our talks when Sarah Broom talks about how crushing the city is, how crushing the tourism economy is to the folks that are so reliant on it for employment. And there's a longer piece of it about, and maybe it's what I have in there about, I will never, ever, ever have the same reaction to friends and acquaintances who talk about New Orleans lovingly and tell me about how nice the people are, and tell me about how everyone is so happy, and when I liken that to when people tell me about Mexico and how nice the people are there. Unfortunately, this is a complicated thing. People are nice because their livelihoods depend on it. And that really floored me when I read that part of the book, because it was something I was always really proud of. And and I know it's true, and I know it's complicated, but there's such a part of it that I was sort of oblivious to, and it was just like this arrow through this inflated idea of how nice we are here. And so I am no doubt positive that we are reliant on the tourist economy at large, and we are reliant on the tourist economy for the TEP Center. But I hope we go into the future of this TEP Center and how we advocate for you know, access and infrastructure to get there, walk into this conversation with our eyes a little more wide open about how we sort of make a better city, including better wages for the tourist economy workers, better housing, better transportation, these things, if we begin, the TEP Center is a subset of a much larger tourist economy, and I am really hopeful that if you can affect the larger economy, the larger tourism economy, it will have a net benefit to projects like the TEP Center and its longevity and its sustainability. Melissa I am a planner that I play on TV. Melissa is a real city planner, really urban planner, and I would love to have her chime in on this.
Yeah, I'm taking a deep breath. It is certainly complicated, for sure. I think one of the things that I constantly struggle with is what can we do differently now than versus yesterday? How do we deal with what we have seen, laid bare, moving forward? So there are so much points of inspiration and encouragement, but identifying kind of the external actions that are needed to ensure that practices and policies and processes are truly meeting community need equitably, and is moving the social justice needle is really kind of the key here. So having proactive dialogue and proactive planning really starts with taking a pause and really defining values and defining who is, it gets difficult when you think about sharing resources and who's in control of resources and how resources flow. It's really kind of taking a step and a pause and figuring out how can there be an equitable model around that. And I think we're struggling. As planners and as architects, this is what we talk about. And we say that, we recognize that as a profession and as an institution, we have our part, we have played our part, right, in upholding systems of oppression and white supremacy. But with that acknowledgement, right, comes the real work. Right, it's hard making that acknowledgement, but the real work is then how do we encourage the alternatives? So I think it's I have to take a deep breath with that one, but certainly it is centering, right, non-traditional stories depending on where you sit in that work.
Yeah, I would say, Melissa, that last comment you just made about non-traditional stories is the key to for me, it's the key, right? So I see the yellow house, the actual house itself, Ivory May, the mother, and the city all being linked by this kind of idea of a stoic heroism, right? That gets removed in the case of the city, maybe by the storm. I don't think Sarah's mother really wanted it removed. I think writing the book was a difficult thing for her and her family. But I see Miss Tate's center also being this kind of moment where you reveal her heroic stoicism in a way that brings to life or brings to bear those stories for other people to make witness to. And we all know heroicism now in pop culture has to do with a cape and a person that flies around that happens to be mostly white. But there are these stories that I think exist, that I know exist, that make up this city more than any other kind of metropolis, in the world, right? So those are the stitches that I'm super interested in kind of revealing and finding, and making sure that people take notice. So, you have a building, and kudos to Mike and his company, and kudos to Ms. Tate, who will not relent, right? I mean, you cannot relent. You know, $1.6 million is nothing compared to where you've been and what you've raised. And it will become a shining light in that neighborhood, and people will come see it, and people will hold it up around the neighborhood, and it will make them realize the things that they've been living with that maybe they don't need to live with. And I think and that's your point, right? So if you have this symbol, you know, that you can start to have in these places that are more remote, there aren't the French Quarter, that aren't uptown, that aren't mid-city, that aren't the, you know, Lakeview, or places that we all know that we can name, but let's say New Orleans East, which again has this kind of weird promise, right? So the Ninth Ward, the lower Ninth, has this kind of weird promise that was made by someone looking to get rich quick, that people made their home, right? That did that even through sheriff sales and made their whole life and family in that place, that you can't take that back, right? I think you have to understand and live through either these stories or structures, or understand the city in a different way. It's not a city created only through Mardi Gras, right? It's a city created by these people that live here and have and raise families. And I think that's, to me, what really struck home, literally, for me in the book.
One of the things that I will say, Nick, you just said about understanding this remote place, and when I hear the word remote, you think far. Geographically, there's no distance between the east and downtown. I mean, realistically, but it's so many worlds away. And then even the difference between Wilson Road and going to, you know, in the heyday, Lake Carmel or Bullitt Estates and all of that. I mean, that's a vast difference in, you know, of mindset, of experience, of the haves and the have-nots, all of that, and it's a 2-minute ride. So just that when you said that word, that was the core that struck me. It was remote. It's, you know, it's not really.
I think that feeling of remoteness or not being remote, you know, I think we carry that, and there's so much distance that's created, you know, between us, but then not brings us close. And I think about the book when, you know, Sarah joins her family in California, right?
Mhm.
And she's hiding in her brother's bathroom, and she's writing scenes in her notebook instead of feeling. To me, that just struck me, right? It's like, oh, how do you even navigate those feelings, and how do you heal from that? And then what do you use? How do you harness that as the transformational power? And can you? And who's around you to do that? And I think that furthers, you know, any sort of remote feelings.
So I'm gonna try and say something here, but it might get a little gangly. If it does start making cat sounds or something. There's a lot of things on my mind about this conversation about the book, and this again, this idea about this sort of New Orleans East Inc. And the profiteering that went on around these, and I think about, I just came back from visiting my parents since the first time since the pandemic with the baby, and my parents live in El Paso, right on the border. We had a house. We rented a house for the weekend, which is we actually were in New Mexico, right on the other side of the border from El Paso. But we were 5 minutes from my parents' house, but we were really close to the kind of tri-state border, we call it, sort of the kind of point where Mexico, New Mexico, and Texas all sort of come together, where the line, or where the river becomes a line. So where the river stops being the border, and then it becomes just sort of a surveyed line. And I've been back quite a few times, but seeing the wall, seeing the effort, the resources, I was talking about the amount of resources and effort that we constantly have to put towards creating something like that, when the natural state of things is not that. The natural state of things in that region for millennia has been very different. It has been families that have lived on both sides of the river, and that the river was the source of life and prosperity and whatnot. And today the river is just a bed of sand. It really doesn't trickle past the town of El Paso, because upriver it is all taken for irrigation, for agriculture, to make green chilies. So I'm a little bit conflicted by that. But the thing that struck me about a place like New Orleans and a place like El Paso is that there's this constant sort of amount of resources that we throw at holding back the natural state of things, right? Our levees, our so naturally our levees, but also the resources that we throw at keeping the folks who need to work in the tourist economy, keeping them in a place where they have to work in the tourist economy, right? And so there is a natural state of things that we are actively working to stay away from. And to me, it struck me when I was home, just to kind of see all the resources that we put towards keeping these lines very clear, and we do that here also. And so it just sort of is one of those things that, like, are we really getting somewhere, or is this all ephemeral, and is this just eventually we can't sustain these efforts, especially when these efforts are not for a more sort of universal good. And it's not about like profits, and it's not about money, and it's not about any of those things when it becomes when those things start to fall apart, that keep the water at bay, that keep people from becoming upwardly mobile and moving away from their minimum wage jobs in the quarter. And so I hope I didn't sound too kind of out there about it, but it really sort of feels like I don't know. When I think about the Yellow House, and I think about the levees, and I think about the water and how she talked about the water, it just it brings up a lot of thoughts and feelings about what we're doing to sustain a level of false kind of stasis of things, or the kind of natural state of things is that we're keeping at bay. So I'll stop now.
You weren't totally off. I got it. uh, One of the things that you just said about uh, the the use of, I wondered why she used the term the water instead of the storm. You know, the because I always equated water with cleansing, but this was um, and in a way it kind of was a cleansing experience for some. But it was also, and I think when you say storm, it says something destructive. And, but in her growing up, the yellow house built her up, but it was also destructive. So just kind of thinking about that as well.
Yeah, I've always used the storm as the term that I kind of became accustomed to using. Um, the federal levy failure never kind of rolls off the tongue in conversation as well, even though that's what it was. But the way that she used the water, I think was I probably definitely much more descriptive for the way that I understand the water entered the city. Also, right? It was um, uh, a slow filling up of the city in many ways, and
Mhm.
not like what happened, say, on the Mississippi coast. That was sort of this surge that pushed through. Um, yeah, and it was such a part. It was such a character in the book. Um, it was a major character in the book. Uh, yeah.
I have a question. How how do you think her moving away, going to, what is it, Burundi or something, and all of the travels that you did you get the impression that she was kind of trying to run away or find something? Or I don't know. Suggestions, thoughts.
Yeah. So again, I'm not a native New Orleanian. I think there are many in the room that can answer this question, but I see again a city that um, didn't value a lot of folks. That was obvious. It was obvious how it cared for the levees. It was obvious how it cared for the people after the levees failed, and who they took care of and who they didn't. And so I think when a lot of folks left, what I've always heard is a lot of folks left and saw that they were treated better, that
Think
they
better.
saw better opportunities. And I think in some ways, um, that's uh, that's what I felt when I felt like she was uh, going to these other places to sort of be treated better, to find better opportunities. Um, but it's also the one place where the kind of the 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 draw to you, the sort of like the the tractor beam of New Orleans that pulls you back is really strong. Even for me as not a non-native, I miss the place when I'm gone. Um, I feel very comfortable when I land back in New Orleans, and it's humid and it's dense, and it is a reassuring feeling for me, and I don't know why. I grew up in a place that has 4 inches of rain a year, and we get 4 inches of rain before lunch sometimes. And but the draw for me is, I don't know how to explain it, but I feel much more comfortable. I sleep better. I obviously eat better, and I, I think that there is this tension, especially for natives that that don't have opportunities here, um, to go to other places. I think you see that with the jazz musicians in New Orleans. I think all the way back to Louis Armstrong, right? Like he didn't have the opportunities that he got in New York. So many of them, that Donald Harrison, the Marsalises, everyone is in New York, but they all come back home. They're always home for Mardi Gras. They're always home for St. Joseph's Night. They're always coming back, but they're sort of know that the opportunity is out there somewhere else, and the city just never, in the past, never really celebrated them in a way or rewarded them in a way that allowed them to stay like that, to stay sort of here the whole time. And I think that's the same for Sarah. But I don't know. That's just my.
I think it's a validation when you go away and you get that stamp of approval from others outside of, if we just stick with musicians, outside of the people who who you grew up, who are going to come and see you play, and who, if it costs 50 cents, they don't want to pay that. And then when you go somewhere and you can make 100 times what you're making in the city, then that pulls you away. But it's still, the music is different, the feed is different, so that's why you're tethered back to this place. But I also wanted to say, I think that Sarah was constantly trying to detach herself from everything. And it wasn't a thing that happened in her late teens, early adulthood. It was
Always.
her childhood. She never quite felt her place.
Yeah. And
And
I
I
think
think
her
that's
search
what
for her father too.
yeah, the book was written so that she could figure out her place. Where is the physical place, but also where does she fit into their family? She is the oddball out.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I kind of felt like she was going to these places and she was searching for something, but I think she had to come back home to figure out or finally get to what she was searching for. And then when she was looking for her father, trying to find a picture of him, I kind of felt sad for her, because when her mom said that wasn't him, and it was just, like, she's been searching for something now. Whether she found it or not, I'm still not sure, but the book was good.
Other thoughts?
I can say that the guilt of family members not experiencing Katrina when you do is pretty strong. So, someone that lived it her whole life here and went away to school, and having that event happen while she's in New York, and not being able to reach those family members, I think that was is a pretty heavy guilt that she maybe was trying to shed when she went to Africa. My feeling was it was to experience the horror that maybe she missed in New Orleans in a different place, and see if she can be effective in correcting that, and then learning from that and coming home and trying to, she worked for Negan, for God's sake, right? So, her need to kind of resolve that guilt was pretty powerful. When I realized when I was reading who she was, that she was the one on the TV show, I was like, oh my God, then it all kind of come flooding back to me, those kind of moments on that 9 a.m. show where I was, where I was at the height of skepticism. We all were, right? Like, nothing's happening. It's not going to be okay. How long do I have to look at this? Really, really weird place at that time. But that's what I was feeling for her, at least in that time of the book.
you were saying that when she was working on the show, even that was, I think, to kind of like her penance for not being
Yeah, I mean, I
in
think the
her
comment
mind.
her mom made when she said she was going to work for Nagin is, kind of the moment when her mother knew that she was trying to make penance when she didn't need to be, right?
She's like, why?
Why? What,
Yeah,
what? What are you thinking?
yeah. And I think towards the end, I also began to realize it was more of it was Sarah's story, but also Ivory's story as well of where her place is, was, will be. Because she's displaced again.
Right. And she wanted her home.
Yeah. But what is that? And why couldn't in the country be home? I mean,
That's the kind of power of memory, right? Like it is quite powerful. It's even if memory is not completely accurate, it is your brain and body creating that, right? And that's what's so powerful about it. I think that um and it goes back to this idea around story, I think being more important than the bricks and the mortar and the wood and the shingles. And I think the book is also, yeah, it's Ivory's story, and I think it's Sarah's sort of love letter to her mother, and this house and Ivory and everyone now won't be forgotten, and I think that is so powerful about what story can do um, for us. And I also think that these stories, when Melissa said the non-traditional story and the importance of non-traditional story, what I think is so also very important about that is that it cuts across grains of of um, of what we have today, these structures that in many ways are facades, these structures of white supremacy and power. And the only way that you can really address these is by these stories that begin um, to sort of uh, to really show that they're sort of false structures. And it goes, we were talking about the hallway of the TEP Center where Leona is going to have the principal's office there, and one of the conversations I had with the historic preservation folks who approved the drawings, both at the state level and at the national level, was about that hallway, and they, they're I said earlier that the hallway of a school building is a character defining space, and the character defining space is the most important space, and you have to preserve it in order to qualify for the financing that we need from the historic preservation tax credit program. Well, my argument to them was that this building and this story is not about the hallway, and the standard that they give for why the hallway is so important is because all of the school children who use the school building walk down that hallway. They didn't go to every classroom, so the classrooms were secondary to the hallway because everyone used the hallway. And when I prepared for this sort of little sparring session, and I should say everybody was really, really sort of helpful and cooperative. but they have to follow the letter of the law per se. They said this is a character defining space, and I said this building is on the National Register for civil rights. It is not on the National Register for architecture, and so that hallway is not important because there were no children in this building that used that hallway during the era that this building is on the National Register for. There were 3 little girls. They were not allowed in that hallway. They were only allowed to go through the lower entrance, and their classroom was on the lower floor. So all of that is bunk. No offense to your historic preservation standards. and I think that these, I didn't think this before this project, but these stories are the things that break down these structures. And I didn't believe it until I was faced with it, that this is how you do this. And we have to continue to kind of lift up these stories and give them space. They already have a voice. We don't have to give a voice to them. We just have to kind of get out of the way. I just think that this is what we have to do. And I think those of us on the board of the foundation, of the Architecture Foundation, sort of see that, right? And see that that is the direction we want to go in. And believe, however naively, that we can affect some positive change in our city, or at least expose more people to these stories.
What can we do differently today than yesterday?
We need to talk about it. Nobody wanted to talk. We need to talk about it.
How many people knew about Tulsa before a year or 2 ago?
But not in the same way, right? I mean, one HBO show changed the way a whole country that watches that channel understands that race relation in that city, right? So, kudos at least to that writer. I don't know if he's going to continue, but I thought that was a pretty powerful scene to understand it, so for someone that likes pop culture and has children and watches movies on HBO. I thought it was a pretty good moment. But I think, and we are interested in the stories, and this book just reveals to me, how special a mundane story about a single yellow shotgun can be if presented properly, right? Truthfully, right? In a real raw way, not super polished, not architected or writered up, right? So, to be true to the nature of her mother and the family, and regardless of what the structure was, a house or not, to assign it that memory, I think is something that again, the revisiting of our mission statement really points to, in my mind, and revealing those stories or finding them or making people comfortable to tell them may be the most critical thing that we have to do, right? So like Ms. Leona says, you just have to talk about it or make people comfortable in a place or online or whatever it is, that they can tell those stories, and that all those stories are important.
Well, I think that's a great way to conclude our conversation. Unless there's any burning final thoughts. I want to thank you on behalf of the foundation. I want to thank Leona and Charmaine and Kathleen for participating and being our partners. I hope our partnership continues. I think there are things that we want to do. There is definitely an effort afoot at the Architecture Foundation to figure out how we can make a donation to the TEP Center, and how we can continue to promote what's happening there. And I hope, and I know if I'm around, I will make sure that we do have a partnership that lasts beyond this book club. I think this book club is the first step. It's sort of it's our first date to a long lasting kind of partnership. I hope that just continues to grow, and we're just really honored to have you, that you spent all this time with us. And yeah, I'm telling your story wherever I go.
I know you are. It makes me tell it too, so tell the truth. But thank you. Thank all of you. This is truly, it's been an experience. It's kind of hard to talk about it sometimes, but we got to talk about it.
Melissa, Nick, you guys have any salutations?
This has just been such a rich continuum of a conversation, and has for me personally, been transformative in terms of what is it, the work that I need to do, right, to encourage alternatives. And then for us collectively, it really has pushed us into a space where I feel extremely proud and humbled and honored to share spaces like this with each and every one of you. So the conversation is going to continue. It's not going to end. And I look forward to the next time we could be together, for sure. Thank you for everything. And Miss Leona.
Thank you, Melissa.
As always, it is an honor.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you, Ms. Leona. I'm just in awe of what you're doing, and I'm hoping we can make as big a contribution as we can to it. The discussion has been fascinating. That not being a New Orleanian and not really having lived there long enough, I came away, having read this book, with just an extraordinary appreciation for how easy it is to be part of the superficial enjoyment of New Orleans, and how unrealistic that is in terms of a whole life, in terms of understanding an area, a city, community. And your discussion was very poignant and very helpful, and I really appreciate your letting us sit in as real outsiders to it all. But it really was powerful, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, on that note, it's a wrap. We will continue to stay in touch. I think I have posted the first 2 sessions on our YouTube page, and this will get posted as soon as it does computer stuff and compresses the file and things like that. And then I'll upload that. And I hope in the future we can contact you about other events and programming that we're doing I really do think that this program that I talked about earlier is going to be exciting, and I think it's going to be something that lasts a long time. So excited about it, and excited about the kind of future of the organization and where we're going. And Tremaine said this was her first book club, and it was great. So there we go. We've got a convert.
Can you be a lifetime member, Tremaine? And I was thinking, like the other thing to think about is the next book club doesn't have to be 100% online. So we're going to come to your house and
Okay.
your house in your living room, like book club people do.
Yeah. We can have book club snacks.
But even Miss Leone came off mute for that one, so I think I got it. I know, Sarah, maybe we can have book club when you all are in town, when you can come around too. So I would love to see your faces in person as well as on the screen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank y'all. Great evening.
Bye.
See ya.